Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips. Today is going to be an updated SSD buyer's guide, and we're going to be focusing on only one capacity of SSD, and that is for a very good reason. Prices continue to fall on SSDs, so higher capacities are becoming more affordable. It wasn't that long ago that most people were buying 60 gig SSDs for their boot drives, which I would consider to be a very bare minimum. You can put Windows, maybe a couple key applications on there, that's it. Then 120 gig drives got affordable, and all of a sudden enthusiasts started going with those because now you can put a couple games on there as well. Well, now 240 gig drives are getting into that same price point that we used to see 120 gig drives at, and 240 gig drives for most of the current generation SSD architectures actually deliver the best performance. So we're going to find out, if you're looking for a high capacity SSD, which one out of all the drives featured today is going to provide you with the best user experience. Now, all SSDs' performance and reliability are affected by three major things. That is the flash, the controller, and the firmware. So we have 4 SSDs. These are all performance SSDs that I believe represent a very good mix of the controllers and flashes and firmwares that are available in the market today. We have the OCZ Octane, which is using Intel synchronous flash and an Indolink's Everest controller. We have the Crucial M4, which is using Micron synchronous flash and their own custom controller and firmware. Next, we have the Patriot Pyro SE. Now, this one's a really good one to watch because this is going to be quite representative of the vast majority of SandForce drives. That is a SandForce controller. This one's got sync flash, but you can get ones with async flash or toggle flash, which will perform slightly worse and slightly better, respectively. Finally, we have Intel's SandForce implementation. This is using Intel sync flash, obviously, and what makes theirs special is the fact that it uses a custom firmware to achieve their legendary reliability. This guy was in development for a long time for Intel to be satisfied with it to release. Since the feature sets of all of these SSDs are quite similar, that is to say they all support SATA 3.6 gigabit per second, they all support trim, which keeps your OS running in tip-top shape unless you're running a legacy Windows operating system like XP or Mac OS X. Those do not support trim. It pretty much comes down to performance and the trust that you have for the brand, the reliability that you perceive. So let's focus on performance for the sake of this video, starting with the ever-popular ASSSD. So this is just for reference, and this is interesting because it is a higher performance flash that is toggle NAND on the Mushkin Chronos Deluxe with a SandForce controller, but it is a 120 gig drive, so we score 635 marks in ASSSD. Moving on, we've got the Intel 520 series drive. This one performs incredibly well, but it is a little bit more expensive compared to its competition. You get the Intel name, you get the legendary Intel reliability, but it's definitely got the horses to back it up, unlike the previous generation, 510, which did not perform that well compared to its SandForce competition. Next, we've got the Patriot Pyro SE. So this is fairly representative of any synchronous flash SandForce controller product. So it is slower than the Intel, but it's up to you how much it seems like it's that different. But it is using plain Jane SandForce firmware, not the custom Intel one. Next, we've got the Crucial M4. The Crucial M4 has a couple of cool things going for it. One is it offers excellent performance at a reasonable price, so kind of between the third-party SSD makers and Intel at the highest sort of premium. They're somewhere in the middle there. They have an excellent track record for reliability. And when it comes to firmware, they are doing a bang-up job because they have even delivered firmware updates that dramatically improve the performance of their drive free of charge to their users, whereas I know for a fact there are other companies that would, if they found a firmware tweak that improves performance, they'd release it as a separate product in order to get a little bit more cash on that SSD versus the other ones. So thumbs up to Crucial for supporting their customers in a big way. Last but not least, we have OCZ's Octane. Now, the reason I went with the Octane is because OCZ is the only company that has access to the Everest controller right now. OCZ also has a wide variety of other SSD products. In fact, probably the widest product mix, including SandForce controllers, Intellink's controllers, as well as various types of flash, all kinds of different performance levels. But the reason we went with the Octane is because OCZ actually owns Intellink's now. So this is sort of more like their house controller, although you're welcome to buy a Vertex 3, which is actually the most popular drive at NCIX right now, using synchronous flash and a SandForce controller with a regular firmware. So that one scores only 461, although it is debatable how much of that is actually representative of real-world performance, because the Octane performs quite well in non-compressible workloads. PC Mark 7 is another popular benchmark because it takes fairly real-world scenarios, throws them at your storage system, and tells you how your PC is going to perform overall. Now, all of these drives had a full Windows OS installed on them, and then the PC Mark 7 full suite was run. So I wasn't running just the storage suite on them as a secondary drive. So we have the full PC Mark number as well as the system storage score. Now, these are all very close together. So what this means in my interpretation is that pretty much no matter what performance drive you buy, out of at least the 4 that we have here today, you're going to get a very satisfactory computing experience, and it's going to absolutely blow away your hard drive. I can say that with all the confidence in the world. So let's start with the Chronos Deluxe. That is my lower capacity toggle NAND drive. That gets 5505 PC marks and actually gets a system storage score of 5281. Now, in order to achieve this only like 60-point higher score, the Intel 520 series SSD actually gets a system storage score of 5400 marks. So that is actually the highest out of all the ones we have here, using Intel's flash and their custom SandForce firmware. The Patriot Pyro SE gets a slightly higher overall score, but that can be attributed to some other factors in the variances between runs, because the system storage score is actually marginally lower, although pretty much still within margin of error, than the 520 series SSD. So you do get Intel's, once again, legendary reliability, but it looks like you can get pretty much 99% of the performance in a real-world scenario from the Pyro SE. Next, we have the M4. So the M4 does drop a little bit off, so the system storage score is 5188, but it has a lot of upside. It is known to perform well in a desktop over an extended period of time. It takes very good care of itself, although in a non-trim environment such as OS X, you're probably still better off with a SandForce. Finally, we've got the Octane. Once again, I can't emphasize enough that you can get other SSDs from OCZ with other controllers, because the Octane only gets about 4969 right there in our system storage score, making it the lowest overall PC Mark score. So that was a lot of numbers, Linus. Which SSD should I buy? The answer is, if you buy a modern performance SSD using a high quality flash, you're going to have a pretty good overall computing experience, especially if you're coming from a hard drive. Now, what I always tell customers is shop based on capacity first. If you know you're going to need more than 120 gigs, buy a bigger than 120 gig SSD, even if it means you're going to get one that's slightly slower. It'll still blow the doors off your hard drive, and it'll still run with even the performance SSDs. Now, when it comes to all these different SSDs, I would go as far as to say that any one of the brands in front of me, I would recommend with 100% confidence, and any one of the products in front of me, I would also recommend with confidence, with my experiences with them. With Intel and Crucial being sort of standout gold stars for having outstanding reliability in terms of the overall return rates that we see from customers. So thank you for checking out this episode of NCIX Tech Tips, and don't forget to subscribe.